Welcome to Dream Small. I'm Jason.
And I'm Whitney.
In a world challenging you to chase big, we dare you to dream small.
We're a family of 8 who's fostered, adopted, and stumbled our way through learning that small, everyday choices can change lives.
Join us as we share stories and encouragement to help you live out your purpose.
Welcome to another episode of Dream Small. If you're listening in real time, this week is the week leading up to Father's Day. So for all you dads out there, I have a quick joke for you. I only know 25 letters of the alphabet. I don't know why. I laugh at myself. But truly, Father's Day is a great time to take a moment and reflect and honor men in our lives that have built a legacy, especially in light of this podcast that we've recently started. Today's episode is actually about one specific man, a very generous, a very loving, a very kind, and quiet man. This man passed away in December of 2024. He's my father-in-law. He opened his arms and loved me unconditionally from the moment that he met me. He prayed for me long before he ever knew me. We have a lot of things today that we want to share about him in honor and in memory of him, and how the way he lived his life actually led into our vision, Dream Small.
Great intro, Whit. That was real. That would be thrilled to hear that. At the time we're recording this, Phil Robertson, the senior guy from Duck Dynasty, for those of you who may know, had passed away about 2 weeks ago, and a lot of the things I've been listening to online were just sharing about his life, how impactful he was, all the different things he did. It triggered in my mind, I was like, I want to share about Dad and what Dad did. It was kind of interesting when Dad passed away. Mom asked me to share at his funeral, which of course I was honored to do, and of course I was going to do. And I started thinking about a lot of the things he showed Ryan and I. And he really dreamt small. Even before Whitney and I came up with the Dream Small, or we heard Josh Wilson's song, my dad's life growing up as him as a dad, he really dreamt small. And we want to share how some of his examples of dreaming small undoubtedly led to what Whitney and I are doing now. How his throwing seeds out there and starting a foundation of dreaming small has grown to what we're doing and will continue to grow. And just how small steps can create a forever type legacy.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back to your dad and just the things that you've even told me over the years, for example, you know, you said your parents gave to the church all the time, but you never had any idea how much they gave because it didn't matter.
They never shared. I remember one time seeing a check on a table. I forget how old or how much, but I just remember being like, wow, that's a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, never bragged about it, never told people about it, never.
They served in the biblical way, right? Under the radar, not looking for the applause of others, doing it just out of the goodness of their heart.
Yeah. So I'm going to walk through a couple examples of how Dad dreamt small and how he did the small things with consistently the whole time that he was my dad, and just how those examples, I never realized it at the time, quite honestly. I think that's how it typically works. I had no idea I was picking up what he was doing.
Isn't that how it always works? Yeah. We always say that children learn, they're caught more than they're taught.
More is caught than taught.
Yeah.
The first example I want to share of Dad was with a lady named Irene.
This was the neighbor, right?
No, this is the old lady at the nursing home.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to the neighbor. So Irene was a very elderly woman at our local nursing home. To say she was a bundle of joy would have been a very bold-faced lie. Let me just say that. But she wanted to get to church every Sunday, and she had no other way to get there. So Dad stepped up and made sure, I think for close to 10 years. Maybe that's too long. Maybe it's less. I don't know. But every Sunday, Dad would go to the church, get the church van, take out the seat. So there was enough room for this old lady in this wheelchair. He would use the ramps he built, first out of wood, and then he upgraded to some stainless steel ones. Those were pretty Cadillac. He would go to the nursing home, He would get Irene, he would roll her out, push her up the ramps into the van, lock her into place, go to church, sit in church, take her home, and then we go home. He did that just consistently for, like I said, I think it was a decade. I don't know how long it was.
That had to have added an hour onto each end of his Sunday morning service.
At least an hour, yeah. I mean, I can tell you, he asked Ryan and I to come, and sometimes I think he voluntold us to come, and it was not the most fun and enjoyable time, but man, did we learn some things by watching Dad serve that old lady.
Yeah, wow.
I don't know if Dad was ever given a thank you. I don't think he really cared. No one rarely saw it. It was one of those acts of service that is truly makes a huge difference in somebody's lives. It is absolutely an example of dreaming small.
You know, it's kind of like you said earlier, he didn't chase the spotlight, he chased faithfulness.
Yeah, he definitely did. Second example I want to share with Dad is those of you who know my brother know he's a Marine. He's about to get off of active duty, so all of us will be having to deal with him in the civilian world. Lucky us.
Welcome.
Yay. We had a young man from our hometown who was struck with an IED. He recovered, and then he was tragically came over. He had a random virus that basically rendered him paralyzed and barely able to speak, and landed him in a nursing home. Dad would go visit him, I think every other week, every week. He would go visit this young man consistently. Dad didn't know him before. He wasn't close to the family. It wasn't like a friend of a friend. I know the fact he was a Marine played a part of it, but Dad would just go visit this young man consistently every week, spend time with him, talk to him. And I went once or twice, and the young man would light up when Dad entered the room. Just the fact that Dad, with a very busy job, a family of his own, would take his time to go visit this dude in the nursing home.
Doesn't that make you think of the gospel? How Jesus never forgets the one. I think your dad imitated that really well.
Yeah,
Justin.
He just served. He had a niche for finding the little gaps that people didn't really want to serve in, and he would step in and do it faithfully.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him at one point. They being my home church, were raising money for a mission trip to Mexico, the Caribbean, somewhere, right? And Dad looked at me and said, "It's interesting that people will go to the Caribbean, but they won't go visit the nursing home down the street."
There's a lot of truth to that.
He wasn't against the mission trip, but he just had in his soul, and obviously I've caught up, to do the small things that nobody's paying attention to.
Yeah, I mean, it took me quite a while to realize right now is not our time to go on mission trips abroad. And the main reason is because we're living in the mission field in our home.
And the last example of Dad dreaming small was with our neighbor, with Donna.
There she is.
She was our elderly neighbor. Her husband lived with her. He passed away when I was 3, 4, 5, early. I don't ever remember him, so it was early in life. And Dad just helped take care of her like she was my dad's mom. She wasn't,
or wife.
She was needy, and I don't think it was always that she actually needed stuff. I think she just wanted company from my dad. And then once he got a little older, Mom stepped into that role too. But Dad definitely set the precedence. He'd help mow. He'd help move furniture and do all kinds of stuff.
I can remember being at your parents' house visiting, and your dad getting what felt like dozens of phone calls a day from Donna to come help with things. And he always did.
Lucky Dad.
I mean, he wasn't always thrilled about it, right? But yeah, he always went.
Yeah, he sure did. Dad never sought to be great. That wasn't his goal. That wasn't what he was chasing. He sought to be faithful. And I think, based on what I've learned and read, that made Dad great in the eyes of God. And when Dad passed away and he went to heaven, I think God probably had a pretty special place for him. I want to challenge all of you listening. Well, before we start challenges, anything else, Whitney, you want to share about Dad?
The one thing I would love to add is how your dad openly accepted and loved every child we welcomed into our home. Not just his biological grandchildren, but every foster child that visited our home became his grandchild. He developed such sweet relationships with them. He loved them. He was just as much excited to see them as his own grandchildren. So, I mean, that's unique and that's really special.
He was a pawpaw. That's what the kids called Grandpa. He was pawpaw to all of them. And about 2 months before Dad passed away, a foster kiddo we had previous came back to us, and she held a special place in his heart. And even though Dad had dementia and his memory was failing, and I mean, he wasn't really making a lot of coherent sentences or anything like that, Mom told him that this young kiddo had come back to us, and she said he lit up, and you could see he started to cry a little bit. So
Aww.
All these little kids we've had in our home meant a lot to him, just like they did to us. I would challenge anyone listening, don't shy away from the small things, like my dad. There are always going to be shiny and bright objects to chase or missions to do or whatever it is. Do the small things.
Yeah, maybe seek out that, what was her name again?
Irene?
No.
Donna.
Maybe seek out that Donna down the street, right? Or look for someone to serve, or find someone in a nursing home who doesn't have anyone. There are so many opportunities probably within a 5-mile radius of where you live.
Go find somebody to serve. That's the easiest thing. The shortest way, I think, to word this. Go find somebody to serve.
And you know what? Serving someone else inevitably will end up blessing you more than it blesses them.
Even do it when you don't want to. I guarantee you my dad on more than one Sunday probably wasn't super thrilled about going to the church, getting the van when it was 10 degrees, warming it up, scraping the windows, getting those freezing cold aluminum, stainless steel. I don't know what he made the ramp. Something's shiny. And get him in the van, go in there, greeting her, not being greeted with grace or thankfulness, just more of an obligatory thing you're supposed to do. Still did it. It's not always supposed to be fun and lighthearted and super exciting. That's not the way I think it's designed.
No, serving doesn't have to always be easy and fun and lighthearted, right? But we're called to do it. Thank you for listening to our story about the legacy Pete has left us. And again, I wish you a happy Father's Day and encourage you to keep dreaming small. Thanks so much for listening. We are grateful for your support. If you enjoyed this episode, would you please take a moment to follow or subscribe to the podcast? And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, a quick rating or review goes a long way in helping others find the show. And hey, if someone came to mind while you were listening, would you please share this episode with them? Thanks again, and remember, dream small.